Wanderers, have you ever searched through YouTube and seen all of these high-level pit pushes that you can never really seem to replicate? What's the secret? How do you get yourself there? That's exactly what we're going to cover in today's video. This is a complete guide to endgame gearing, every tip, trick, and secret that you're going to need to push your character to the highest level. So where do we start? I've written out a complete guide for everyone. This will be in the description of this video. You'll have access to it. This will also have access to all of my how-tos, all of my content that I have been farming, searching, adding in over the years. It's all right here. So make sure that you take advantage of this. We're going to be in the gear like a pro. And that's what we're going to teach today, how to gear. The first thing we're going to talk about is going to be materials. Now, you're going to need a lot of them. That's why I have said in every single video, make sure that you salvage your gear early, never sell it. Why do you want to do that? Because you're going to need hundreds of thousands of veiled crystals, you're going to need thousands and thousands of forgotten souls, and you're going to need more Obducite than you want to even imagine. Forgotten souls. These run out very, very quickly. Now, Blizzard made a very, very nice change to how they work in the new patch. A little tip for everybody to start this off. If you were to hover over any of your materials, it actually tells you where they come from. You can get your Forgotten Souls in Legion events, Tortured Gifts in Hell Tides, caches from the Tree of Whispers, Infernal Hordes, Undercity Karas, Dark Citadel, or bartering from the Mercenary Den. So looking at our list here, the best way that you're going to be able to get these Forgotten Souls is probably going to be a mix of things. Now, doing the new Legion events is actually going to give you 200 Forgotten Souls. That's a whole lot. That is going to be only once every 20 minutes, so you want to make sure that you're working that into other routines around it. But don't miss it, because in just a couple minutes, you open up those chests at the very end of the Legion event, and you get a ton of Forgotten Souls. So Legion events are great. In between, another great way, they added in a whole bunch of new Nightmare Dungeons this season. This one right here is a Herodic Material Reserve. The Herodic Material Reserves give you all of the materials that you're going to need for upgrading your gear in the endgame. This is a great place for Forgotten Souls. These will offer up to 25 Forgotten Souls per chest that you open. When you use a Nightmare Dungeon sigil like this is going to have different Herodic chests throughout the dungeon that as you run through, make sure you explore the whole dungeon. You're going to open up these chests and there's going to be a ton of materials in there. You also are going to be getting Obducite. Now, Obducite, we talked about that a little bit. You're going to need a lot of it and a whole lot. But by the end of this video, you'll realize exactly why you're going to need so much of it. Now, talking about Nightmare Dungeons, we said that we needed a lot of Obducite. Nightmare Dungeons are a great way to do that. The best way to do that is actually going to be Strong Rooms. Strong Rooms are going to be your best Obducite farm in the game. You can find Nightmare Dungeon sigils right now that have Herodic Strong Rooms as one of the affixes here. The good news is you don't actually have to have a Herodic Strong Room Nightmare Dungeon sigil to find the Herodic Strong Rooms. You can actually just go into any Nightmare Dungeon and they have a chance to spawn. You get thousands and thousands of Obducite at the end of the Herodic Strong Room once you open up the chest. Now, you can go and finish the dungeon if you want, or you can just bounce around to the next Nightmare Dungeon and see if you can find another Herodic Strong Room. If you're running short on sigils, you can always come over here to the Occultist. You can go to Craft Sigils, and then you can craft a whole bunch more. You can also salvage your sigils here for additional sigil powder. As you salvage them, you're going to get back sigil powder, which is used to craft additional sigils. Nightmare Dungeons are going to be a great all-around source for farming the materials that you're going to need to upgrade the entire endgame system. Veiled crystals, we talked about that a little bit also. You're going to need a lot of them. And how do you get them? Nightmare Dungeons are a great source. It also tells you that when you look at your veiled crystals, you can get them from salvaging rare. You can get them from salvaging rare, legendary, unique gear, and mythic gear. Tree of Whisper caches, Legion events, Infernal Hordes, and from elite monsters. So just running around killing monsters is also going to give you veiled crystals. When you're salvaging your gear, there's going to be certain things to look out for, and the best way to farm veiled crystals in the game is going to be Belial. Now, obviously, Belial mats can be a little hard unless you've been trading. If you haven't been trading, that's definitely going to be the best way to get your Belial mats. If you have not, this will still be the same for any of the bosses. Salvaging unique gear will give you the most veiled crystals out of any other piece of gear in the game, but it has to be ancestral. I have a whole bunch of different items here, if you can see along the bottom. Everything from your magic gear all the way up through your ancestral unique gear. When we salvage them, your blue gear doesn't actually give you anything because we saw in the tooltip that you don't get any veiled crystals from here. But when you salvage your rare piece of gear, you're going to get 2. A legendary but non-ancestral is going to give you 1. And then when you look at your ancestral pieces of gear, they're going to give you 10. Your regular unique pieces of gear are going to give you 3. And then your ancestral unique pieces of gear, they're going to give you 30 veiled crystals. This is why it's so important that when you go and you do bosses, that you're salvaging all of the gear that you're getting on the ground. So as you're farming, you're going to be getting all of your bundled herbs. Now, if you look here, bundled herbs are going to be from collecting things around the map, sellers, as well as tortured gifts and hell tides. You do also get a ton of them from opening up whisper caches. Now, it doesn't list it on here, but if you go through and you open up whisper cache, it's probably going to be your best way to farm them. The whisper caches come from completing grim favors around the map. My favorite activity to do is to look for something like a lair boss. You go in, you kill the lair boss. You don't even have to open up the chest. You get the 5 grim favors. You can even do it on Torment 1. Do it really, really fast. Swap back to Torment 4, open up the whisper caches there, and you're going to get all of the materials that you would have gotten on Torment 4 and not on Torment 1, even though you completed them on Torment 1. The reason we're talking about this is we're going to be covering incense and elixirs. You want to have an elixir running at all times, no matter what, and you want to have incense from all 3 categories as well. There's 3 different ones. Now, there is no one size fit all. It's going to be depending on whatever you need for your character. For me, for the barbarian, when I'm looking at elixirs, I know that for me, if I'm going to put on the elixir of resourcefulness, this is going to be a huge increase to my damage. So that's why I went ahead and I just crafted 99 of them, because I know that I'm going to be needing them over and over and over again. Then when you're looking at your incense, you have your core, your defense, and your resistance. All of them, you can actually use one of each. I have them listed here. For me, I'm going to be running Soothing Spices, Redamine Buzz, and I'm going to be running Ancient Times for some strength, which is going to give me some damage. You can pop all of these at one time. So you can have 3 different incense running. That puts me just over my armor cap. Then it also is going to bring my resistances, except for that one, very, very close to cap, if not over cap. And then I can use my elixir here. Now I'm going to be getting maximum experience, which is important. And then I'm also going to have all of the defenses or offense that I need. We got our materials, we got our incense, we got our elixirs. Next, we have to make sure we pick our build. If you do not want to follow a build guide, you absolutely should look at build guides. It's going to be the best way to figure out how to build your character. By what skill I mean is that you're going to pick something to build around. The best way to maximize the damage in this game is to pick a skill and you focus on that one. You can put a whole bunch of things on your bar, but they all need to complement one skill. Now, using a build guide is going to be a great way to get yourself started. This is my build guide. All of them will be on Mobalytics. I'm the writer for the Barbarian class. It has been a ton of fun to play the Barbarian this season. They're a lot stronger than everybody thought they were going to be. When you're looking at build guides, you're going to have different stats that are going to be given. All of these stats will tell you exactly what is going to be built around what. You look around your main stat right here, we're going to be building around Lunging Strike. That's going to be an incredibly strong build this season. It's fast, it's fun. All of my gear and all of my aspects, all of my Paragon board is all built around increasing Lunging Strike damage. So even if you do not want to follow the planner, it's great to hop on here and see, why are we running these tempers? You can test what you're going to be running. Do we really want to be running Belligerence? Let me try Belligerence, or let me try something else. There is a huge wealth of resources out there in the community of how you want to build your characters and why you're going to be building things a certain way. So guides are a great source for things that may be broken. Right now, the Ugly Bastard helmet is not working correctly. The damage number is not applying if you keep on reapplying Wrath of Berserker, but if you've never looked at a build guide or you haven't searched around to see what is broken and what's not working and what is going to get fixed, then you may not have known that, and you may be running something that's not giving you any damage at all. The next thing that you want to learn is going to be multiplicative versus additive damage. Now, there is a lot more that is going to go into damage building in this game. This is a very, very brief and basic overview of how it's going to work. And remember, follow along with the document in the description of this video if you can't really see it on the screen. And then also the Lunging Strike build will be in the description as well. So here's an example of that. If you have 1000% and you have an aspect, a temper, or a gem that's going to give you plus 100% additive damage versus something that's going to give you 25x multiplicative damage, you're always going to take the 25x. When you go into the game and you look, an example of this is you're going to look at your tempers here. We're going to have 159% increased critical strike damage, and that's a plus. And then we're going to have 120% at the very bottom in the aspect here. That is going to be an X. Now, it seems like if you just read those out, 159% is going to be more than 120%. In this instance, that's not actually the case. That 120% is going to give you a way bigger increase than that 159%. And here's why. If you have 1000% and then you take your 100% and you add it to that, you now have 1100%. But anything that is going to be a multiplier, so let's say 25%, you're going to multiply by 1.25, that's actually going to leave you with 1,250% instead of your 1,100%. And as these multipliers get bigger, let's say, for example, the 120% that we saw on the weapon, now you're going to multiply it by 2.20. So that's a huge increase to your damage. So now, as you can see, as you start to add more and more multipliers, your damage is going to exponentially increase. You get more than enough additive damage from all of your gear, all your tempers. Everything in the game is going to just give you enough additive that you really need to focus on adding as many multipliers to your gear as you can. Now, this is just a very, very brief overview. There are a whole lot of really, really smart content creators out there that have made some really great videos on this. So if you want to go check those out, make sure you search through YouTube and find some of the really great videos out there and some really amazing content creators. The next thing we're going to cover is going to be your GA gear. Now, how much does your GA gear really matter? Especially in the very beginning, not too much. Do you absolutely have to stress yourself out about finding the perfect piece of gear? No. In order to get yourself to a spot where you can farm high-level pits and you can farm all of the content in the game, you can do that basically with just single GA pieces of gear. That's why these planners here are so important. When I'm building planners, I put the most important stat as the GA. Now, I could put GAs on every single piece of gear because obviously that's the end game. That's what everybody wants. But you don't actually need that. For this build here, ranks of Pit Fighter are going to be the most important one. It's going to give me damage. It's going to give me damage reduction. Ranks of critical strike chance, so I can get to 100% critical strike chance, is going to be the best thing that I can get on the Rage of Haragoth. For my Pain Gorgers, I want ranks to basic skills. So if I only find one GA Pain Gorgers with ranks to basic skill and a really, really great aspect, then that's the piece of gear that's going to get me and probably carry me all the way to one of the highest level of the pits that I can get to. And here's a great example. I've cleared pit 102. I have only single GA here. I have a single GA here. I have a single GA here. I have a whole lot of pieces of gear that really you wouldn't consider to be great, but it's gotten me as far as I need to get to. I've gotten all my glyphs to level 100 without the help of any other class. It's very, very doable with minimal pieces of gear. So don't focus too much on that. The most important part is going to be a combination of three things. We're going to start with tempering, and that's going to go right into enchanting, and then we're going to go into masterworking. I have a video on a complete breakdown of masterworking, tempering, and enchanting. That'll be in the description of this video. This will not be a complete how-to. This will be how you're going to focus on it for the end game push, not for just learning how to do masterworking. So if you haven't got to watch that yet, make sure you check it out. It has a ton of really helpful tips inside the video. So we're going to start with tempering. Now, tempering is going to be the first process that we're going to do. If you want to know why, make sure you watch that video. But for your tempers, how do you know which tempers to use? You're going to look for anything that's going to start off by, let's say, multiplying your damage. Maybe you need something that's going to help keep you alive. I actually do have poison resistance tempers on my gear that I've been running, and that has not held me back at all in terms of how much damage I'm doing. I put my poison resistance on, so as you saw, I was missing one resistance. This is what's going to help me get there. If you don't need this and your character feels fine, I feel fine without having all my resistance capped, you can remove this and you can put something else there. So I'm looking to get my Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian running. I have this really great piece of gear here. I'm going to want to put my tempers on here. Now, how do I know where to start? I want to know something that's going to give me multipliers. I want to multiply that damage as high as I possibly can. So when I go into my first temper here, now there's a lot of different things that you can see. You have Hammer of the Ancients deals double damage. That seems great. But if you've never built a character and you were to put Hammer of the Ancients deals damage twice onto a one-handed weapon instead of putting on a two-handed weapon, you're actually going to be missing out on a whole lot of damage. When you add tempers like that, and you look right here, I have a chance for Lunging Strike to deal double damage. I put this on here. I only need to put it on just my two-handed weapon. It doesn't need to be anywhere else. So if I was to put this onto my one-handed weapon, I would probably be wasting a slot. Now I want to find something that's going to be multiplicative. So if I go up to here, and I'm looking at Belligerence, and I look at Warpath and Wallop. Now I know in my skill tree, those are going to be great options for adding multiplicative damage. We can start with your Warpath here. Warpath is going to give you 4% per rank. That's going to be straight damage after we overpower. It's going to be an overpower build, so 4% damage after we overpower per rank seems like it's going to be great. Belligerence is not going to do anything for me because we're not going to be using a basic skill in that build. And then when we look down at Wallop down here, Wallop is actually going to give me 5% per rank by hitting a vulnerable enemy. We'll have vulnerable damage up all the time. This is probably going to be the best choice that I want. So that's where you want to make the decision of what you're going to run. So I'm going to select this here. I get my free temper. We're going to throw this on here. I'm going to get Warpath. I didn't hit it. The next thing that we want to look at for your offensive one, I'm going to be running the Grandfather. I know this. Now, the Grandfather is going to give you 100% increased critical strike damage. When I look at my stat line here and I go back into my stats and I look at my critical strike damage is currently sitting at 1200. If I take this off here, my critical strike damage goes down to 500. If I put this back on, that's boosting my critical strike damage by quite a lot and is multiplying it. So how I can add into that multiplier is I'm going to go to offense here, and then I'm going to look for something like critical strike damage in the Worldly Finesse. If I roll critical strike damage, that's going to be a huge increase to my damage. If I wasn't running the Grandfather, this vulnerable damage on a perfect roll that I had is actually going to be the exact same amount of additive damage that critical strike damage would be. If I have nothing on that's going to multiply either critical strike damage or vulnerable damage, then that's probably a great roll. If I'm going to overpower 100% of the time, then I might want to take the overpower roll. So you're going to want to learn what the best way to multiply your stats are when you're looking at your weapons. When you're looking at regular legendary gear on your armor, that's where you're going to find other unique ways to add in tempers. You're going to figure out what you want to do. For me, when I was leveling, I needed cold resistance because I was dying very, very often. So I took a regular piece of legendary gear, I put a passive in there that I needed for the build, and then I put cold resistance to help keep myself alive. I kept Tibolt's Will off until I was strong enough to swap out to Tibolt's Will, and then I took the pants off, and now I didn't have to really worry about it. But as you level up your Paragon board, you're going to slowly fill out more and more. So when you're tempering, pick the ones that are going to give you the best option. The next thing we're going to cover is going to be enchanting. When you're looking for gear, you actually only need to find 2 stats for your gear. You don't actually need to find all 3 of them if you're looking at a guide. If you look at this weapon right here, this has strength, max life, and damage. Now, damage is not the best option for you. Damage is the lowest additive number that you can get, and it also really isn't multiplied by a whole lot. So when you go over to the occultist here, you can actually go to the enchanting tab, and we can put in our weapon here. This is why you only really need to look for 2 of the 3 stats. You can see your possible affixes here. Now, we know that critical strike damage was going to be something that was being multiplied, but because this is going to take the same spot, we really only want to get the additive damage that's going to be active the most amount of time. So if you have 100% critical strike chance, but your vulnerable damage falls off sometimes, then you may not want to run vulnerable damage. If you do not overpower every single hit, then maybe you run critical strike damage. If your critical strike chance is 20, then maybe you run vulnerable damage all the time because that's going to be effective more often than not. So then you can just re-roll, and then you can pick the affix that you want. I did that on my amulet here. That counteroffensive, now remember, this can get very, very pricey. I still haven't found my +3 to counteroffensive because I accidentally clicked too fast and got rid of it. That being said, I spent a lot of time re-rolling and re-rolling and re-rolling. And if you look here, the cost is incredibly expensive. So before you dive into any of this endgame stuff, make sure that you have farmed enough and you're ready to make sure you tackle a very expensive process. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be your masterworking. Now, what is a great strategy for masterworking? Now, you have to have 2 tempers on in order to masterwork. Anything that is non-ancestral can only go up to +8. Anything that is ancestral can go up to +12. When you're first getting started into your end game push, you're going to want to take everything to 4, and then you're going to want to take everything to 8, and then you want to take everything to 12. Now, a question that I get all the time is, well, I really don't have any gear that's worth masterworking, so I haven't done it yet. That is actually a very big mistake. When you go in and you start masterworking, right? We talked about going to 4. When we upgrade to rank 4, we get a 25% increase to 1 stat. That's where the real end game is going to start coming in, but we're going to get to that in just a second. We're going to upgrade again. We're going to go straight to 8. Now, this is only a piece of gear that is just a regular ancestral piece of gear. The reason that you want to masterwork is that I just increased all of my stats on that piece of gear here by 30%, and then I also added 25% to a single stat, those blue ones right here. So imagine taking all of your gear and adding 30% more to your stats. That's a huge increase to your survivability, to your damage, all of it. So if you didn't do this portion of it, you're not even close to ready for endgame. Seems like it could be a waste because I just spent all of those materials when I could have waited for a better piece of gear. The good news is, if you go to your salvage button here and then you salvage that piece of gear that you just masterworked, you're actually going to get back all of your Obducite. Every single one of them. It all comes back. So you don't have to worry about the Obducite. There are a lot of other materials that you do not get back while you're doing that process, but most of those you'll be gaining throughout the game. So you don't actually have to worry too much about having all of those materials that you're going to lose when you have to salvage. You get the Obducite back, and then you have enough to remasterwork the next piece of gear that you just found. So make sure you take all of your gear to rank 4, then all to rank 8, and then all of them to rank 12. That's going to be your very, very first step. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to use your build guide, or you're going to use the knowledge that you have from either watching this video or from playing the game, that you're going to pick the stat that you want to get what's called a triple crit on. Now, this process is not an easy one. It is completely random. There is no way to guarantee it. I love to say that this blacksmith or does better than this blacksmith, but the truth of it is there's only random numbers, and that's all it is. You're either going to get really, really lucky, or you're going to have to spend a lot of time and invest a lot in getting this triple masterworking done. Now, what the masterworking is, when you look at your piece of gear here, so your masterworking is going to be color coded. Blue is a single into whatever stat that is, that 25%. Yellow means that I hit that 25% on the same stat line twice. And then when we go into something that's orange, that means that I hit that exact stat 3 different times and completely random. It is definitely a process, and we'll show you how to reset and why you want to do it. For this build here, maximum resources is an incredibly strong buff because it's going to be adding in damage to your adaptability by a lot, as well as the Ramalodnies. They both are going to play off of your maximum resources, and you're going to get more damage based on how much you have. So having your maximum resource is much better than strength. It's way better than critical strike damage and overpower damage. So now the real end game starts. This is where you're going to start resetting your masterworking. You've gotten everything to 12. You've picked the stat you want. You know that I want critical strike chance because I haven't hit my numbers yet. So I need to get to 100% critical strike chance. So that's the one that I want to do. You're going to hit this reset masterworking button. Now, if you're on a controller, it does not disappear. It just goes along the bottom. So just make sure you look along the bottom, because all of this stuff right here, every single thing that on a controller will be down there, including the possible affixes. So you're going to look there. When you reset, you lose everything. It costs you materials. It's going to cost you 5,000 gold, and you're going to lose all of the stuff that you have put into masterworking this piece of gear. When you reset it, it goes right back down. Now, how do you work on getting this done? We're going to go to level 4. If we don't get critical strike chance, which we didn't get, we're going to reset again. This is why it's going to get incredibly pricey, and this is why you're going to need all of the materials that you possibly can get. If you do not salvage your gear from level 1 all the way up, and then you just start leaving gear on the ground just because you don't want to pick it up, you're going to end up running out of materials. Because if you can see, I'm already on my 5th reset, which is a lot of gold, a lot of materials, and I haven't even hit a single roll on the first one that I wanted. So as you're going through, and so after you hit your very first one, so I want critical strike chance. I hit my first one. Now I don't need to reset it. Now we're actually going to upgrade again. We're going to go to 8. Now I hit skip, and then I missed it. So now you have to start the process over again. You go back to resetting, and you start back from level 1. You don't actually go back, and you cannot save your ranks. You cannot go back to 4 only. So make sure that you farm a lot. You want to make sure you have enough materials that this process goes very smoothly. So as you can see, this is going to be very, very pricey. The first thing that you want to do is make sure you just get all doubles. Start with having 2 into 1 stat, 2 into 1 stat, 2 into 1 stat, 2 into 1 stat. So this way you don't stress about getting every single thing done. The stronger you get, the more masterworking crits that you get, the easier it's going to be to farm materials. So your strategy is going to be getting everything to 12. Then you pick one piece of gear. You get that to double rolls. Then you pick the next piece of gear. You get that to double rolls. Then you pick the next piece of gear. You get that to double rolls. Then once you have gotten everything and all your double rolls are done, then you're going to move on to getting your triples done. As you can see, I really don't have a ton of triples. I've gotten fairly lucky with a couple of them, but most of my gear is all just doubles. And I've still been able to clear very high levels of the pit. Now, how is that possible if I don't have the best gear and I don't have the best masterworking materials done? Now, that's where you're going to talk about your pit pushing. Good maps are going to be 100% essential for the way that you're going to be running the pits. You have to do what's called fishing for pits. You're going to try and find that perfect dungeon with the perfect monster combination, something that's going to fit your build just right. That's probably going to mean doing a whole bunch of pits and then having to join in and then leave, and then join in and then leave. The best map out there is probably for any class out there. It's going to be the one, the canyon. It's a gigantic open map. You can just run around, grab a whole bunch of monsters, pull them all together, and then kill them all at once. The next thing you need to know when you're going to be running high-level pits is actually going to be when to quit. A lot of the times when you're going to be trying to push your highest level of pit, you don't want to finish it. How do you figure out when to quit? Basically, you're going to fail a run. If you go in and you get to the boss with only 6 minutes left and then you can't kill the boss, you know that you need to have more than 6 minutes in order to get into that boss room and then kill the boss. So watch your timer. If you're getting really, really close to that 6-minute mark, don't even bother. Just exit out the dungeon and then start another one. High-end pit pushing is a lot of repetition, and it is not really a lot of clears. All of the really, really top clears that you get to see on the leaderboards or on YouTube, wherever you're looking, most of the time, those are probably going to be hundreds of runs before they get that clear. And a lot of them, most of them, they won't even finish. They're going to log in, they're going to see the dungeon, they're going to exit out. Then they're going to zone back in, they're going to start killing monsters because they found a good dungeon, they're going to be behind the timer, they're going to exit out of the dungeon. High-end pit pushing is going to be a lot of just fishing for that perfect dungeon. Once you get the dungeon, that doesn't end there. Then you have to get the dungeon, you have to be ahead of the timer, and then you have to find the perfect boss. The fishing is going to continue. Do you need a single target boss because maybe you're going to lose some damage if there's AoE around? Then you have to find a boss that has mostly just no ads. Do you need a boss that has a ton of ads? Then maybe you're going to want to be only searching for Spirit Caller. So now you have to find the perfect dungeon, and then you have to find the perfect boss with Spirit Caller at the very end. It is definitely going to be something that you're going to have to learn as you go, but know that you're going to want to leave the dungeons to save yourself some time. There's going to be a difference between pit pushing and then leveling your glyphs. With your glyphs, you're going to want to run whatever you can do in, at most, when you get up towards the top, depending on what build you're running, about 5 minutes. That's the longest you really want to run, and then you're going to take those chances on your glyph upgrades and see how that works. Now, if you come over here to the Smoldering Ashes, you can actually give yourself an additional chance to upgrade your glyphs. If you die inside of a pit run, you actually lose a chance to upgrade your glyphs as well. So if you're running something where you may die a lot, it's probably not the best one to level up your glyphs with. You want to go down a little bit in order to get there. Before we send you off into the end game of pit pushing, make sure you join up on the Discord server that we have here. This is an amazing community. It is incredibly welcoming, very helpful, and incredibly active. The chat is blowing up all day long. As you can see, there are people here in voice chat that are just hanging out. I was just hopping in with everybody today, saying hi. So make sure that you pop into Discord with us. There's a ton of resources. People are trading all day long. They're grouping up together, killing bosses. Everything that you need Diablo 4 is going to be here. So make sure you take advantage of this because it is a great resource, especially if you're limited on time. Playing with a group saves you on materials, saves you on the grind. It's going to be a really great place if you want to do anything Diablo 4. So hopefully I will see you there. You can get to the Discord right from my website here at cliptis.com. I have a ton of Diablo 4 how-to videos. So if you are not quite at the pit pushing level, you can come over here. You can go to the Diablo 4 videos, go to the game how-to videos, and we have everything that you're going to need to know. How to level, what to do at level 60. This is the Masterworking video here. This is going to be the precursor to what you just watched. Some quality of life tips, why you want to ignore the names on your gear, some endgame tips. We have everything that you need to know, including, this is the most important one, why you want to ignore your attack power. So if this is something that's going to be helpful for you, make sure you hop in, check it out. And that's all I got. If you found this video helpful, make sure you share it with your friends. Thank you already for watching. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.